Welcome back to Tarik Talk. Let's get into today's episode. Esther Art Fair returns to New York City from May 12th through May 16th, 2026, continuing its rise as one of the most talked about independent contemporary art fairs operating during New York's massive Spring Art Week. Now, compared to some of the larger commercial fairs dominating headlines every May, Esther Art Fair occupies a very different kind of space within the contemporary art world. And honestly, that's exactly why so many artists, curators, collectors, and younger galleries have become increasingly interested in it. Esther has quickly developed a reputation for being experimental, community-driven, artist-focused, and intentionally resistant to the hyper-corporate atmosphere often associated with larger international art fairs. The fair was founded around the idea of creating a more intimate and collaborative environment where emerging galleries, artist-run spaces, and younger contemporary practices could exist outside the pressures of traditional blue-chip fair structures. EstherArtFair.com. And over the last several editions, Esther has become one of the key alternative destinations during New York Art Week. For the 2026 edition, Esther Art Fair brings together approximately 45 galleries, project spaces, and artist initiatives from New York and around the world. EstherArtFair.com. Participating exhibitors include younger galleries from cities like New York, Los Angeles, Mexico City, London, Berlin, Brussels, Seoul, Toronto, and São Paulo, creating a very international but still highly curated atmosphere. And unlike mega fairs where booths can sometimes feel repetitive or overly commercial, Esther strongly encourages focused presentations and experimental installations. That curatorial freedom changes the feeling of the fair itself. Visitors move through spaces that often feel more like temporary exhibitions rather than purely sales-driven booths. And honestly, that slower and more thoughtful atmosphere is part of what makes Esther stand out. The fair encourages discovery. People spend time with the work. Conversations happen naturally. Artists and gallerists engage directly with audiences. And because many participating galleries are younger programs, visitors often encounter artists at important turning points in their careers. Another major aspect of Esther Art Fair 2026 is the fair's emphasis on interdisciplinary and experimental practices. Painting exists beside installation, sculpture beside performance, photography beside soundworks, textile practices beside immersive digital environments. The fair embraces artists working fluidly across mediums, and that openness reflects broader shifts happening throughout contemporary culture right now. Artists increasingly move between disciplines rather than staying confined to traditional categories. Esther fully embraces that hybridity. Another exciting development this year is the expansion of Esther's site-specific installations and pop-up programming happening throughout New York City during the week. CulturedMag.com. Several participating galleries are organizing collaborative events, rooftop projects, performances, screenings, and temporary exhibitions extending beyond the primary fair itself. And during May in New York, that citywide energy becomes part of the entire experience. Frieze Week transforms the city completely. Collectors move between fairs nonstop. Gallery openings happen throughout Chelsea and the Lower East Side. Artists host dinners and performances. Museums launch major exhibitions. Fashion brands organize activations and events. And within that larger ecosystem, Esther offers something much more intimate and experimental. The fair feels younger, more flexible, more artist-centered. And honestly, that energy feels deeply connected to New York's long history of artist-run culture and independent creative communities. Another major talking point surrounding Esther Art Fair 2026 is the continued emphasis on collaboration rather than competition. The fair openly encourages participating galleries to think collectively rather than purely commercially. EstherArtFair.com. That philosophy creates a very different atmosphere compared to many traditional fairs. There's less hierarchy, less intimidation, less pressure to perform luxury. Instead, the focus remains strongly connected to experimentation, conversation, and community building. And visitors consistently mention how approachable the fair feels because of that atmosphere. Another exciting aspect this year is the strong presence of artist-run spaces and independent curatorial initiatives. Several exhibitors operate entirely outside conventional gallery systems, presenting collaborative projects, temporary collectives, publishing programs, and alternative exhibition models. ArtReview.com. That inclusion feels incredibly important because some of the most innovative work happening today often emerges outside traditional institutional structures. Esther recognizes that, and by giving visibility to those practices, the fair expands conversations around what contemporary art spaces can actually become. Another major highlight of the 2026 edition is the increased integration of performance and live programming throughout the fair week. Several artists are presenting durational performances, sound installations, spoken word collaborations, and audience interactive works unfolding in real time. Artforum.com. That live dimension creates an atmosphere that feels constantly evolving. The fair changes throughout the day. Installations shift. Performances emerge unexpectedly. Audiences become participants, and honestly, that unpredictability gives the fair a strong sense of immediacy. Another thing people consistently mention about Esther is its emotional atmosphere. There's vulnerability inside many of the presentations, there's experimentation, there's openness to failure and risk. And compared to larger fairs where presentations can sometimes feel highly polished or market calculated, Esther often feels refreshingly human. The work feels alive. Another major focus this year is inclusivity and representation. The fair continues prioritizing galleries and artists from underrepresented communities, including women artists, queer artists, artists of color, immigrant artists, and multidisciplinary practitioners whose work challenges traditional institutional narratives. EstherArtFair.com. And importantly, that inclusivity feels embedded structurally into the fair's identity rather than functioning as surface-level branding. That distinction matters. The conversations happening inside Esther often reflect broader questions surrounding access, visibility, labor, identity, and sustainability within the art world itself. And honestly, those conversations feel increasingly urgent right now. Another exciting development surrounding the 2026 edition is the fair's growing engagement with technology and digital experimentation. Several exhibitors are presenting immersive media environments, projection-based installations, AI-influenced works, interactive sound pieces, and hybrid physical-digital practices. Observer.com. But unlike highly commercial tech-focused events, the digital work here often feels deeply conceptual and artistically experimental rather than product-driven. That balance helps maintain the fair's intimate and creative identity. Another fascinating aspect of Esther Art Fair is how it positions itself within the broader New York art ecosystem. The fair does not attempt to compete directly with mega fairs like Frieze or TIFAF. Instead, it creates its own lane entirely. More collaborative, more experimental, more community-oriented, and honestly, that independence may be exactly why the fair continues growing in influence. Younger collectors increasingly want experiences that feel authentic rather than overly corporate. Artists want environments that allow risk-taking. Curators want spaces where discovery still feels possible. Esther seems very aware of those desires. Another important element of the fair is affordability and accessibility. Many participating galleries present works at more approachable price points compared to larger international fairs, helping younger collectors engage directly with contemporary art collecting. EstherArtFair.com. That accessibility changes the energy significantly. Students attend. Emerging collectors attend. Local artists attend. The audience feels broad and diverse. And because of that openness, the fair develops a strong sense of community throughout the week. Another thing that makes Esther particularly interesting is its refusal to fully separate art from broader cultural life. Music, design, fashion, architecture, publishing, film, and performance all intersect naturally within the fair environment. And honestly, that interdisciplinary energy feels incredibly contemporary. The boundaries between creative disciplines continue dissolving. Esther embraces that fluidity rather than resisting it. Esther Art Fair 2026 runs from May 12th through May 16th in New York City during one of the busiest and most internationally connected weeks in the contemporary art world. EstherArtFair.com. And for anyone interested in emerging galleries, artist-run culture, experimental contemporary practices, and one of the most intimate and forward-thinking fairs in New York, Esther Art Fair continues to offer an experience that feels deeply connected to the future of independent contemporary art.